Okay, good morning, grade sevens. Today is Wednesday, June the 3rd, and we are starting chapter 6 history. So, chapter 6 history is all about this War of 1812. So it's called the War of 1812, but it lasted longer than just the 1 year. It began in the year 1812, however, and this is a war, and it's really the only war that we have where people who are now the United States and people who are now Canada fought with one another. So, yeah, let's just get right into it and learn a little bit about the War of 1812. Of course, Canada is not a country in 1812, right? They're not a country yet. So they are called British North America. That's the official name of the colonies that are owned by Great Britain at this time. But we know that British North America becomes Canada. That doesn't happen until later, but it's the seeds of the great nation that we now know today. Anyways, so yeah, there was a big war in the year of 1812. Let's talk about this. All right, so the United States became a country about 30 years prior to 1812. And both the United States and Great Britain were using those 30 years as a period of peaceful times where people were kind of like they were settling down. They were recovering from this war where they had created this country. They were making roots if they were the loyalists who were setting up in Ontario or in Quebec or in any of the other areas. So after this period of about 30 years, there were a couple of things that were happening that led to this war. First off, we have Great Britain, who is a little bit bitter that these 13 colonies that used to belong to them no longer belong to them anymore, right? They lost. And they're bitter about this. So they're kind of taking every chance that they can get to try to like make life hard for the Americans. So there are a bunch of American captains who are captaining merchant boats. These are American boats that are carrying American goods on the ocean waters. And anytime a British ship could take over or overpower one of these vessels, one of these ships, they would search the ship trying to find anybody who they could snatch and say, you're not a United States person, you're a British person, you can't be on this ship. And so people were kind of like kidnapped because they were accused of being British, and they'd be like, no, I'm American, I belong on this ship. No, you're a deserter, you have to come with us. And so the Americans were really mad because they're like hijacking their people. So that made the Americans angry, it made them want to fight. They were also angry about the First Nation situation. So after the United States became a country back in 1774, when they signed this peace treaty and all of this was said and done, the United States was very interested in moving into that Ohio Valley area and pushing well past the Ohio Valley into whatever lands they could take. They were kind of land hungry. And so they pushed forward regardless of whatever treaties had been signed in the past. They didn't acknowledge any of the treaties that had been made with First Nations peoples. And the First Nations peoples were really mad about this because this was like, somebody had signed a treaty, they'd been promised certain things, and now they're being overrun by these settlers. And so they went to Great Britain and they said, what can you do about this? We signed a treaty with you years ago that this would be our land, and now, these people are here. What can you do? And the British were a little bit worried about this too, because they thought, you know what, these Americans are they're not respecting any treaties that have been signed. These treaties were signed in good faith, and they're just ignoring them completely. Well, what's to stop them from ignoring any treaties that we have with them? What's to stop them from attacking us, right? Try to take over our land too. So the British were trading with the First Nations, still with the fur trade, but doing a lot of trading with guns, giving a lot of First Nations guns. And what did the First Nations do with these guns? Well, they used them against the Americans, and that made the Americans very angry because they were used to having the upper hand, right? If you've got the better guns, then you control the situation. And so if they can keep those First Nations peoples with inferior weapons, they can keep their thumb down on top of those First Nations peoples and they'll win. But the First Nations were getting good guns. Where are they coming from? They're coming from the British. So that made the Americans angry too. We'll continue.